All right, everyone, in this lesson right here, what we're going to be doing is discussing the flow of working with textures, specifically multiple textures, how we can take multiple textures and then turn them into a single texture through a feature that we can use inside of 3ds Max. This is called texture baking, so that we can then use just that single texture applied to our static mesh over inside of Unreal Ed. And this has some nice advantages, doesn't it, Logan?
Right, with that texture as being just one texture, it would compress down nicer.
Which, of course, when people are then downloading maps, since we're now talking about custom textures, of course, they're going to have to get your textures, and getting one texture that's been compressed down as opposed to perhaps multiple textures would be a lot better.
Right.
Okay, so the idea is to start out inside of Photoshop. For those of you that have never seen Photoshop, this is it, version number 7. And I'm going to make 3 very simple textures, nothing fancy here. So for those of you guys out there that are already Photoshop gurus, put on your snoring glasses for just a minute. We'll be done. And for those of you that have never seen Photoshop, you may find some of the things that I'm doing here rather interesting. I'm just going to go ahead and come up here and do File, and we're going to do a new scene, and 300 by 300 is good. I'll go ahead and click OK. And there you go, Logan. Let's just use this as our texture.
Right, that's like stuff I used to do when I make tests.
We have a nice white texture. Take some text, put it on, and go, hi. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so one of the things I do want to point out before I start getting too deep into this is that when you start dealing with textures inside of Unreal, there's a lot of things to concern yourself with, and we're not going to make this a major lecture on textures. This is more the workflow of dealing with textures and getting those textures baked out into a single texture for using them perhaps as skins, and also dealing with light maps as well, which is something we will address at the end of this lesson. Now we can start getting into format types and alpha channels and so many different things in there, and because of the length of time that would be required to do that, well, this VTM is already going to be a long VTM. I'm willing to bet you that we're now looking at probably over 7 hours worth of content. So going to have to be relatively careful about what we talk about. So that's going to be one of the things we're going to have to cut out. We could really save that for a VTM all on its own a little bit later. Isn't that right, Logan?
Right. I mean, we're going to be looking at more of all the steps required to start with your own custom textures, bring them in, apply them, bake them into one, then actually use them, as opposed to detail on every single step.
Exactly. Now, inside of Photoshop, I could spend days showing you how to create textures here. Again, it's not a texturing lesson, but I do want to make something very simple. So let's go ahead and start out. We got a little 300 by 300 document right here, and let's just go up here, and we're going to go and select a gradient tool, and we'll use the copper gradient, and what we're going to do is just a very simple click and drag. And we'll throw a gradient in there. Very simple. You'll notice for those that are not accustomed to working with Photoshop, we have many different styles already set up that you can go in and select and use. What I'm doing is basically just creating the old standard brushed metal look that seems like there's 10 million tutorials all over the place to do it, but this will work well for what I want to put together. So with this, the next thing I want to do is go ahead and desaturate this, and I could go about doing this by simply coming up to image here, come down to adjustments, and then desaturate, or I could use Shift-Control-U, and I'm about to just start switching over to using hotkeys as opposed to digging through everything all the time. All right, so now what I want to do is go ahead and take this and just grainy it up, make it real noisy looking, kind of like static or snow, if you will. So we'll go ahead and come up here to filter, and then I'll just simply come down to noise, and I'm just going to add some noise to it. All right, so now we've got some noise. That's definitely roughened it up, perhaps a little bit more. Make sure that it's monochromatic so that it's nice and black and white. We don't want to have any color going on in here. So I'll go ahead and click OK. Now what I want to do is apply a blur. As a matter of fact, I want to apply a motion blur to this so that we could streak these. This, again, is heading towards getting that very basic brushed metal look. And to do this, again, I shall come back up here to Filter and then come down to Blur, and then from there come over to Motion Blur. From inside here, I can set my angle, and I can set the distance here. And, of course, we can go with real low distances, and it's going to look a lot grainier. Or as we get higher and higher, then we're going to start getting very strong lines. So let's go ahead and back this guy off somewhere down, perhaps a little bit more. Something like that looks pretty good. Go ahead and click OK. And if I want to, I could perhaps blur it one more time just to kind of loosen it up just a little bit by coming back up one more time to Filter. And then another filter will apply. This time will be the Gaussian blur. So we'll go ahead and select that. And, with no, we can see that's a little bit more detail, so we can pull a little bit of that detail out by going with about 0.5 as our radius. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And so that smoothed it out just a little bit. Very subtle effect, but sometimes the subtle effects can really help, make a texture, make an image. So with that, now let's see. What do we want to do, Logan? How about, first of all, let's get rid of our little extras up there. Let's go ahead and come down here and create a new layer. I'll come over here and let's draw out a selection area. Something about maybe right about there. What I want to do is I basically want to give a raised look all the way around. We're going to apply these 3 different textures over to a cube inside of 3ds Max. I want to kind of make it look like a crate, like a metal crate, if you will.
Right, where they have the kind of indented framing around it.
Exactly. So with this right here, basic selection, now just simply come up here to select, and we want to inverse that selection. Okay. Now I'll come back up here to my gradient tool, and we will just simply drag out another gradient. And so there you go. Now I'm just going to quickly go through the same process again. We'll come up here to filter. We'll come down to noise, and we'll add some noise to it. And I'll just go ahead and tell it OK. Now we'll come back up here to filter again, back down to blur. And this time, another motion blur. And I'll go ahead and click OK. And even though it's being done last, it's no big deal. I'll go ahead and do a Control-Shift-U. And as you remember, that will go in there and quickly desaturate this. And if we wanted to, perhaps we could even go about making this perhaps a little bit darker. By coming up here to Image, we could come down to Adjustments, and go over here to Levels. And just come in here and let's go ahead and actually, let's not our darkness. Let's go ahead and clamp off our
brightness.
Yeah, brightness. I'm thinking backwards at the moment. Actually, inside my head, I'm already working inside of 3ds Max.
Oh, wow.
All right. So we'll pull this down. Just, maybe it's something like that. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And let's just throw a style on this. Let me go ahead and do a Control-D to deselect that. Let's give it this, nice little 3D effect by coming up here to Bevel and Embossed. And that looks good enough, default right there. So I'll go ahead and accept it. So now let's throw some text in here, and this will help us when we're working inside of 3ds Max to see what textures, which way they're pointing. Just, a good reference, if you will. So to do this, I'll simply come up here, grab the text tool, and we'll come down and let's see. What's some very sophisticated text? How about top?
Yeah, shipping instructions.
Exactly. So we'll put our shipping instructions right about there. And now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and change this to my transfer mode over to overlay. And I can perhaps take a little bit of the fill out. What this is doing is it's just allowing me to see some of my metal, if you will, shine through it. And now with that, let's go ahead and just drop the same effect on this guy as well. So Bevel and Emboss, we'll apply that as a style, and I'll just keep the basic one like such. So that looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back down here to Layer 1, which, if you remember, that's where we put our outside border or frame, if you will, around everything. And I'm just going to do a Control-E to merge that layer down into my background, so I'm dealing with one layer. Now I'm going to do a Control-A to select that layer. Now it's the only thing I've got selected. I'm not selecting top layer. It's on a whole different layer by itself. Now I'm just going to do a Control-N, which will give me a new document, and it's still at 300 by 300, so I'll go ahead and tell it OK. And I'll do a Control-V, like such. And we can come in here, drop some quick text, and we'll give some more instructions, Logan. We'll go with bottom, and we'll move these on over, perhaps to about right here. Again, changing the transfer mode over to overlay, perhaps taking out just a little bit of the fill, and then finally throwing the style in. Of course, we can copy and paste layer styles if we want, just pointing that out, but from one document over to another. So perhaps move this up just a little bit, just being a little picky. So let's go ahead and do one more new scene. Of course, I could have done Control-N if I wanted to, and Control-V and some more text, and we'll just call this side, like such. And move it over. And down to overlay, remove just a little bit of the fill, and let's go ahead and bevel this. All right, so there we go. Think this will work, Logan?
Right, just let us see how our textures are being set up. So when we align them, we can see that the edges of each texture are matching up, of course, because we've got that nice little frame over it.
You absolutely right. So let's see if we can make this work. So we'll start out by saving these guys. Now let me make sure I know which one I'm dealing with. Let me do a Control-D to deselect that there. So we're dealing with top, so File, come down here to Save As, and I'm going to save this out as a target file. And aha, we've already got a top, side, and bottom. You know what I can do is just come in here real quickly and simply delete these guys out because we're not going to need them because we're now making our own. As you can see, we have actually cut this take once before, and it ended miserably. Actually, I think it was about halfway through it, Logan got really hungry and said, can we stop for food? Okay, so we've got top, which actually the pizza is cooking. That's no lie there. So we've got top, so let's go ahead and save that out. And we'll save it as 24 bits. That's fine. We're not going to get into a discussion about that for now. All right, so that works for top. So let's go ahead and come over into side now. Again, File, Save As, or a Shift Control S. And we'll just, again, change the type over down here to a target file type. And we will change this guy over to side. And we'll save that out. And finally, over here to bottom, Shift Control S. And we'll, again, change the type. And again, give it an appropriate name, save, yep, and we are so finished inside of Photoshop. So now what I want to do is go ahead and Alt-Tab over to 3ds Max. From inside here, let's go ahead and create something sophisticated, like a box. Except this time around, as opposed to dragging it out, let's go ahead and come down here to the keyboard entry rollout, and let's set a length of 256, a width of 256, and a height of 256. Being created with a pivot at 0, 0, 0, I will now simply hit Create, and now we have a giant box in our scene. Go ahead and right-click to go ahead and get rid of the box tool. And now let's apply some texture. So I'm going to come in here and open up the material editor. So remember, we have sample slots, and in the sample slots is where we create our different materials. We're going to be looking at creating 3 different materials. Isn't that right there, Logan?
Right, of course, that top, side, and bottom.
Good. Just checking to make sure you're still with me there. All right, so now with the first sample slot selected, of course you can tell because it's got the bright border around it, I'm going to come down here to Diffuse, and I'm going to click on its map channel over here. We could also drag this down a little bit further and come down to Maps as well and come across from Diffuse Color and click on the Map button here. It's the same thing. So going into the Map channel, we're going to assign to it a bitmap type. Go ahead and tell it OK. Now, what bitmap do we want to apply? Let's go ahead and do this as the top. I'll tell it OK. And while working in the material editor, it's very important to understand where you are at any given time. Of course, when we started out by first going into the material itself by selecting the sample slot or using the default one, we're at the root of the material. Right now, this is a standard material type, and it's got things such as basic shader basic parameters, blend parameters, etc., etc. Okay, now if I come back over here to this one, look what we've got now. Now we're seeing bitmap, we're seeing coordinates, noise, bitmap parameters. Well, if I was to come up here and open up my navigator, there up here is my root level of the material, and down here is up under the diffuse color map channel. Okay, and you can see that I'm using a bitmap top.tga file. Does this make sense, Logan?
Right. I mean, a material can be made up of many, many different pieces, so it would make sense to organize them so you can drop down into each of those individual pieces to get better access to them.
You're so absolutely right. So what I want to do is go ahead and jump back up here to default like this, close that out, and let's go ahead and change its name to top. Simple enough. Now watch this. Drag, copy, come back over here, change this one from saying top to perhaps saying side, click on this one and change it from saying top to saying bottom. Now what I want to do is come down here to the diffuse color, or again, remember, you got the same thing available right here across from the word diffuse in the color swatch. Simply click the button, drag down, and I'm going to change the type. Since I'm on this last one here, which was bottom, I'll come in here and assign a bottom, tell it OK. I'll come back over here to this one right here, and again, come back down into the diffuse map channel and change its type to side. All right. Now let's go ahead and go back up as opposed to going over here to the navigator. I know I'm only down one level, so I can go to parent, come over here, go to parents. Now I'm looking at the word bottom, the word side, and the word top. And what I'm going to do while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and turn on Show Map in Viewport because I'm going to want to see this texture applied. So there and there. So now they're all going to show up over here when I apply the texture. Next thing I want to do, let's bring our focus back over here to our object. I'm going to come over here to the Modifier tab, and I'm going to go ahead and right-click, convert this thing, and I'm not going to do it with any mapping coordinates whatsoever. I'm going to go ahead and convert it to an editable poly. Okay, if we would have slapped the material on it, it would have automatically generated those coordinates, and you would have seen it. But now, if I go in here and I start slapping these materials on it, you're not going to see it, even though we've told the materials to show in the viewport. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go ahead and switch over to a sub-object mode. I'm going to be able to select polygons. I'm going to select this one up here on the top, come over here to top, and simply apply it, just like that. And you can see I can't see anything except red. Now what I'm going to do is marquee select across here, grabbing all of them all the way around the side. We'll simply come over here to the side material that we've got set up, and we'll apply it. Now we'll come up underneath from the bottom. We will select the bottom polygon face, come over here to the bottom, and again, simply apply it. Okay. Now with that, let's go ahead and turn off sub-object mode, and look at that. You cannot see our textures. This is because at the moment we've got no mapping coordinates on this. 3ds Max does not know how to show these materials back to you. So we can fix this quickly, as we saw in the basic workflow section in 3ds Max. We can simply come down and we can apply a UVW map modifier on top of our editable poly. By default, the type that we get, the mapping type, is planar. So what's happening is we're getting a projection straight down, which is why we're seeing top just fine. But then what's happening is the pixels are getting streaked straight down because, again, the image continues to be pushed straight down. So we need a different mapping type. So what I'm going to do is select box, because that is the best fit to the geometry that we have, which is a box. So now that we have got that set up, you can see top, side, 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 and look at that, bottom. So it's all looking pretty good, Logan.
Oh, yeah, looks good.
Okay, so at this point, we could take those 3 different images and bring them into, let's say, my level package, and load them in, the textures in, that is. And then we can export this guy out here as an ASE file type and bring him in as a static mesh, and everything would be just fine. But we now have 3 different textures that we would have to make sure that would go off with this map. Is that correct?
That's right. Plus, you'd have the 3 materials that you'd have to apply to it once you're inside the static mesh browser.
Right. So what I want to do, well, actually, the naming's correct and everything. It should.
Yeah, it should pull over, but still, that's
right.
more you have to deal with, whereas
what we're about to do is going to make things a lot simpler.
Right.
So now this is where we finally, after 17 minutes, get to make a little detour and take a look at something new and interesting. What I want to do is I want to render all of these textures out to a single texture, and this is often referred to as texture baking. So to do this, it's very simple. I will simply come up here to rendering, make sure your object's selected, of course, and then from rendering, we can simply come down to render to texture. I'll go ahead and click on render to texture, and it brings us into the render to texture dialog. And then from inside here, there's some things up under general settings that we're going to have to make sure everything's cool with. First of all, file output path. Make sure that we are outputting to the correct place. When you open it up and you see this right here and it looks kind of strange, in other words, the coloring all, don't worry about that. That is like that on every computer, at least every computer I've ever seen. All right, so now it's like, it's not a, it's like a coloring bug almost, if you want to look at it that way. All right, so, I mean, it's not a functionality bug. So let's go ahead and come down to UT 2003, and then from there, let's come down to VTM. Even though it was already set up, I'm just showing you where we're at. All right, next thing I want to do is go ahead and come down to my selected object settings. All right, now, what do we want to generate? What kind of texture element? I need to come over here and click Add, and I could do a complete map. And what the complete map's going to do is it's going to render out my specularity, it's going to render out my diffuse, my shadows, the whole 9 yards, okay, and replace it with that one thing, with that one new texture it generates. But I'm only interested in generating a diffuse map, okay? So, and later on we're going to come back in here and generate just a light map, and then in Unreal Ed we'll put those 2 things together. So with the diffuse map, I'll go ahead and add that as an element. Now, let's come down here and give it a file name. So how about, Logan, let's say final box diffuse.
Sounds good.
All right, and let's set the size to 1024 by 1024. Give ourselves plenty of room here for all these different textures. And a very important thing to note is back up here inside our general settings area, there is an area called automatic unwrap mapping. This is very important. Make sure it is on, okay? And make sure that you take note of your threshold angle and your spacing. It's 0.003 by default in regards to spacing. This is very important because later on we're going to need to flatten out our mapping coordinates when we get into, well, you'll see. But you're going to need to remember those numbers. Sorry about that. I was about to get too far ahead and confuse everybody. I don't want to do that. So in other words, in automatic unwrap mapping, remember these settings. Now, let's go ahead and come back down here and watch this. Everything is set up right. We're sending out just a diffuse map. So let's go ahead and render. Here comes the render. And don't let the render scare you, okay? Because it's going to look like Look at that. It looks like pieces of it are missing. There's my top. Here's one of my sides. There's another side, but very, very dim. Well, there's two Omnis in 3ds Max by default, positioned real far upper left and real far lower right. And when we render out, of course, we've got some of the sides of the cube. That's going to be a little bit dark. And that's basically what's happening right here. This is all of our information, lighting information, the whole 9 yards. But this isn't what was just recorded. We have written out a file called the final box diffuse, which is a target file, that we will use in place of these other guys. And so we'll go ahead and just close this virtual frame buffer down. We're not needing it. And take a look at this. Looks different, doesn't he, Logan?
Oh, yeah, it's somewhat brighter looking now.
Much brighter looking. This is just a diffuse map now. So if we wanted to, we could go ahead and let's go ahead and close render to textures out. All right, so now if I was to come over here and grab one of these empty slots, come down here and grab the eyedropper and sample the material, you'll see that we are now using a shell material. Remember, the normal or standard, if you will, material or default material is a standard type. Okay, the shell material gives us some special functionality. It allows us to break up what material we're going to show in our viewport and what material we're going to show when we render. And you can see that right here. In our viewport, we're going to show the baked material. There's that word baked texture, or baked material that we've been talking about. And when we render, it's going to actually show the original multi-sub object, which is basically these three guys up here. You can see the hot spots in the corners. They're still being used. Okay? So what we're going to do is watch this. Let's go ahead and come back up here. I shouldn't have closed it so quick. Open up Render to Textures. I'm simply going to open up General Settings again. I'm going to clear my shell materials. Bink, I don't need that. And when I did that, look what happened. We automatically went back to using that multi-sub-object material. We've got all three of those material types that we're using. Okay, good enough. And we'll go ahead and clear our wrappers. But before we clear our wrappers, here it is over here. Look at this. We've got a modifier that's been added to the stack, Automatic Flatten UVs, okay, which was very important for that rendering texture to render out the textures properly into a single picture. It had to flatten out all the UVs to do that. Does that make sense, Logan?
Right. And what it did is it looked like it rendered out that diffuse map, but then went a few steps further and assigned some mapping to your object in the viewport, and then assigned a shell material so it could show that in the viewport.
Right.
But what we were really interested in is just that diffuse map that it generated.
Exactly. And flattening out this was very important so that it had basically that flat image for putting everything on. So let's go ahead and clear, and look at that. He's gone. Now watch this. Go ahead and close this dialog back out. And I'm just going to click, drag, drop, click, drag, drop, click, drag, drop, click, drag, drop if you want to. It's not killing anything. It's just freeing up these sample slots. But we're done with it. We don't need it no more. What I'm going to do now is come down here, and if we wanted to, we could simply call this box final, like such. Come down here across from diffuse. Again, let's assign it a new bitmap type. Come down here. Look at this. Final box diffuse. It's one image, and look at the image.
Right, it's just the diffuse, whereas the virtual frame buffer actually it was showing all the lighting and data, but because we only had diffuse selected in the render to texture dialog, that's all it actually saved out.
Right. So and it's just one picture though, one picture, and we've got all of the top, the sides, and the bottom. So let's go ahead and tell it to open. Now let's grab and apply and watch this. Pink. Let's turn this on.
Oh wow, so it's still kind of got its old box mapping coordinates where an entire picture of the texture goes on each face.
Yeah, so we need to come in here and we need to fix this. Well, what we can do is just flatten these UVs out again, and if we use the same settings that we did when we baked the texture out, it should line up perfect, and it will. So all I'm going to do is come back up to my modifier list in my modifier panel, come down, and I'm going to grab the Unwrap UVW modifier. Now what I want to do is come down here, and we will go ahead and jump into Edit. From inside of Edit, okay, so there's our texture right there. I'm going to come up here to Mapping, and I'm going to select Flatten Mapping, like such. Now, remember those numbers we were talking about earlier? Here they are, the three check boxes, which are all three checked, just like we saw when we were getting ready to render the texture out. Now, the face angle threshold, 45 degrees. As far as the spacing, remember it was 0.03 as opposed to 0.02. So let's go ahead and change that. And now let's tell it, okay, look at that.
So doing this flattening was actually pretty much what the render to texture did, just kind of in reverse. Now
Exactly.
We're taking that back in, and because we're using the exact same settings, it can pull the baked texture back in correctly.
It's basically, not so much that it's going to pull it back in correctly. It's basically going to flatten out the textures the exact same way
that it did when it first took the textures.
You're absolutely
and
right.
then and then baked them out.
Dead on. Okay, so now that we've got the same thing, by the way, if you'd have left it with 0.2 or played with other numbers, you would have got, perhaps black seams in here. Would not have laid on there the exact same way. Now, we can go ahead and show you this if you wanted to make some adjustments. While this is not a lesson, again, covering anything about editing UVs, I can show you real quickly that if you wanted to, you could open up your unwrap UVW like such, come down here to select face, and you can select any one of these faces as I'm doing here. And you can see that when I do it, I'm actually selecting the UVs up here inside my UV editor. And you can also see it highlights yellow, and you also see these purple or pinkish colored lines, and basically these are the borders that are bordering with these UVs up here. And if I was to come around here now, in fact, let's go ahead and adjust this so perhaps it'll be a little bit easier to see. And I've got my multifunctional freeform tool available right now, and if I click and drag this around, you can see that I can easily go about controlling the positioning of this texture here, basically how it's being applied down here onto this polygon face. So let's go ahead and undo that a couple of times. I also have the ability to scale it if I'd like to. I can come up here to the corner, and then I can click and drag it, and you can see right now it's just freeform. Okay, so undo that. If I hold Control down, then what's going to happen is it's going to constrain, so I'll be able to constrain it like such. And finally, if I want to, I can come over here to one of the center lines, these little squares over there, and I can rotate the texture as you see there. Just a couple things to do. In fact, you know what, Logan? Let's go ahead and come down here to the old bottom. As you remember, if we're looking at the top, all right, get back over there. If we're looking at, wow, we've done flipped all the way around. Get back up this way. There you go. All right, so top, and we want to come around here to the bottom, and let's say we wanted the bottom flipped around. Very simple. Grab the bottom. Let's go ahead and move this guy up. We've got all sorts of things that we can use down here, additional tools, one of them being rotate a positive 90 and one being a negative 90. So rotate, rotate, done.
Right, if a texture had come in sideways or upside down, that would have been, it's a very quick way of fixing it.
Exactly, and this is why I wasn't really worried about fixing it earlier when we first brought them in. All right, so now we've got this done. I just wanted to show you guys the UV editor just for a couple of minutes. Simple enough. Let's go ahead and close that out. All right, so now, Logan, I think things are looking pretty good. We're pretty much ready to go over and see this thing inside of Unreal Ed. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I would.
All right, so what I'm going to do, a couple more things. I'm going to come in here, and just so that we follow good protocol here, I'm going to come down, turn to poly, limit my polygon size, and let's change it to 3 just so that everything's triangulated. And now I'm just going to simply right-click and collapse all so that my stack has been collapsed. Yep, we're sure. There we go. And now we're ready to export this guy out. But before, well, let's go ahead and just export it now. We can go ahead and export it. So I'm going to File, come down to Export Selected, just like you saw in the Workflow section. And let's go ahead and come into our D drive up under UT 2003 VTM. And let's change our type over to ASCII scene export. And let's just call this, I'm going to call it Final Box, just so it matches up. So Final Box, we'll save that out. And let's see what all am I interested in. Really, for this example right now, best definition of materials, geometric shapes. Oh, that's all good enough, actually. So we'll go ahead and tell it OK. We're done. Now let's go ahead and jump over into Unreal Ed. First thing I'm going to do in here is let's bring in that texture.
Right, because that way once we bring the static mesh in, then the textures will be there loaded so it can go ahead and auto-apply them.
Exactly. I won't have to do any extra work. So we'll just come up here to File, come down to Import, and then from in here, Final Box Diffuse. We'll go ahead and tell it Open, and I'm going to put it in the package My Level. And name's good. Logan, do you have something you was going to say?
No, that's good.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something. So I'll go ahead and tell it OK. All right, so it's just brought my texture in. There it is. Now what I want to do is go ahead and come over here to Static Meshes, File, Import, and there's my final box. As you can see, I'm up under the VTM folder, so it is the correct file. I'll go ahead and tell it Open, and I'm going to place it up under my level as well. And I'm not going to put it in any groups, and I'll leave its name, Final Box, and I'll tell it OK. Look at that.
Oh, wow. So,
I mean, is that simple enough?
Right, all the textures match up again. Because we have that border, we can see that we've got each texture matching to the face it belongs to exactly.
Isn't that kind of cool? I mean, you see the little, I mean, it's like pieces, and they're like just a box all put together, a little metal ridge thing and all. So now you can kind of see what I was going for inside of Photoshop.
Right.
It's better than just like spray painting a little bit of orange and green on there or something. I don't know. All right, so now that we've done this, now what I want to do is take things a step further and show you guys how we can go about creating a light map, and we'll do a couple wacky things just to really push the whole idea of doing it. and then bringing that back, that information back over into Unreal Ed and putting a material together where we'll actually combine the diffuse map and the light map together to give us a whole new effect. Okay?
So we can keep our maps separate, but then have control over how they're brought back in together.
Exactly. Sounds good to me. So what I shall do now is find the good old Alt-Tab key and come back over here to the wonderful world of 3ds Max. And from here, Material Editor, let's just go ahead and close this guy down. And I'm just going to back out a little bit, come over here, and now we can get to lights by coming over here to the lights icon. I went back to the Create panel, by the way, and there's several different light types that you have available when working inside of 3ds Max. We're just going to keep this very simple. I'm just going to create an Omni light. So I'll come in here, drop an Omni light, perhaps drop another Omni light, another Omni light. Let's just go with 4. And now let's come in here to a front view, and I'll grab one of these guys and back away, move tool, and move them up. Something up about there and out. Make sure I'm applying a little bit of illumination. And we can grab this guy and perhaps down a little bit so we can get a little bit of illumination going on down there. And we can come over here and grab one of these guys and move them up, maybe back over there somewhere. And one of these guys, move them down a little bit. And let's see what we're looking at back over here. And maybe move this guy out a little bit so we give a little bit of illumination over here on the front. And this guy, a little bit of illumination in the back. And we can kind of do the same thing here. So let's take a look at that. So he's pretty well illuminated. Okay, so what's the point? Well, let's have some fun with this. Let's grab this light right here, and let's make it. I'm going to come over here to the Modifier tab, and with the light selected, I get all of the parameters for the light. And let's go down here to the Intensity Color Attenuation Rollout. And I'm going to click on its color swatch, and let's make this, let's go with some sort of neon green. All right, so now we have a color effect going on, that's for sure. All right, so now let's go ahead and grab another light. So let's grab this one down here. Or actually up there. Let's see, with this guy, let's actually use this side, Logan, to cast a shadow. Does that sound good?
Okay.
So what I want to do is come back over here to my geometry. Let's just create perhaps a simple sphere. I'll drag out a little sphere right there, and we'll move this guy up, I don't know, something like, let's go with something like that. So, I mean, that should definitely cast, should be in the way, this light to this object, so it should cast some sort of shadow. If not, we'll just do a little tweaking there. What I need to do is select this light, come over here to the Modifier tab, and now I can come down to Shadows, and I can simply turn Shadows on. Okay, and we've got a couple different shadow types that we can use, and we'll just keep it with a basic shadow map. All right, now, oh, by the way, if we were to go in here and come down further, we've got shadow parameters. For those of you guys that may be used to using 3ds Max 4 or an earlier version, you've got more settings in here. And what they've done is they've taken a lot of the things that you're going to do most often and put them up here at the top. This is just so that nobody gets lost that may have used Max in the past.
Right, simply allowing shadows and then leaving the more advanced options for if you would need them for a certain light.
Exactly. And then come down here to Shadow Map if we wanted to adjust the size to make it look a little finer or make it look more diffused or whatever. All right, so with that in place, what I want to do real quick is just come in here, and I'm going to go ahead and do a quick render. I see a shadow.
Looks good.
Okay. So, and we could go in and we can adjust the color of the shadow. Let's do that. Let's go with something that's not too horrible. Yep, that'll be pretty horrible. That'll work, though. All right, so now we've got some shadow color. We see our green light down here. All right, back off to having fun. Let's see, what else can we do? This light up here, we haven't picked on him yet. Let's go ahead and take this light, and what I want to do is let's go ahead and come back up here. I want to actually use a material. In fact, let's go ahead and come down and projector map right there. I want to actually put a material in front of the light, if you will, and project through it. What it's going to do is kind of grainy up everything a little bit. Let me just show you.
Right, it's like controlling the shadow in a sense.
In a roundabout sense. Yeah, it's like throwing a lot of extra shadows on it, if you want to look at it like that. Come down here to a projector map. I'm going to click on None. And let's just come down to, let's just throw a noise on it. That'll work nice, quick, and easy. And if we were to scroll in here real quick right now and do a quick render, so you can see how it's kind of grainied things up. In fact, with that, what we could do is we could go in there and we could change, let's see here, just a little bit. Try not to get too picky here. All right, let's see how this looks here. There, that's nice. Just gave it a little bit more texture, a little bit more feel, got it away from being that bright gray. So we've got something that's now very green. We've got this guy with kind of a dirty action going on. We also have a little bit of the dirty action overlapping over here as well. We've got a bright cyan-colored shadow going on one side. Let's just go ahead and grab this guy and frame select it. There we go. All right, so now, or zoom extents, select it. All right, so now we've got some lighting going on. Is this good enough for you, Logan?
Right, we've got different lighting hitting it from different angles. Plus, we have a nice little shadow that we're going to use and see how well that pulls over.
Exactly. Now, the whole idea of this, as we mentioned in the very beginning of this lesson, is to kind of get around Unreal's, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say it in a negative way, but it's Unreal does a great job with lighting, but when it comes to using Unreal's engine for lighting static meshes, the quality is not as good as what you can get by doing something like this.
Right, the lighting that's actually on the static mesh itself, I mean, it can't be totally perfect because that would just take too long to rebuild.
Exactly.
So
not just rebuild, but think about gameplay. Think about, everything that's involved there. So if we do this, we're cheating. But, of course, in doing this, there's a little bit of a downside. This requires a little bit of planning. You need to know where the static mesh is going to go. You need to know a little bit about the lighting conditions.
Right. What's going to cast shadows on it?
What's going to cast shadows on it? If it's, if there's some bars or poles near it that's going to cast shadows on it. I mean, there's several things that you need to kind of be aware of before you do this. But then once you've done it, kind of set it up like we've done here. Now let's go ahead and see how we can go about creating our light map. To do this, it's very easy. I'm just going to come up here to rendering, and then we will simply come back down to render to texture. We're not going to go in and change anything really, except for we're going to add, this time we're going to add a light map. So I'll go ahead and tell it to add elements. And if I come up here to the diffuse, I no longer need him. I could just simply deactivate him, or I could delete him out altogether. Now on the light map down here, let's go ahead and change its name over to, what did we use before, Logan?
Final box. So
Final box, and let's call this one light map, like such. And again, let's change the size there, 1024 by 1024. I want to make sure they match, otherwise we'd be in a little bit of trouble. And of course, at the top, general settings, make sure these were set as what they were used previously, so that again, everything's going to match up in regards to UV. Okay, so with that, everything's looking good. So let's just go ahead and render. Okay, so here it's rendering.
Right, because we've already got the mapping set up to take in a baked texture like this with these same size and dimensions. So if we leave them the same size for the light map, we'll be able to just slap the light map right on there, and it's already set up, ready to go.
You got it. And look at this, strong greens, a little bit lighter greens. We can see the shadow over here that we colored, some interesting color. We can see the stronger purplish color that we put on the one light, and we've got the noise in the projector map slot, and we can see the effect of it here. We can see it down here, and it's being felt a little bit here. So we've got a lot of lighting effects that we've added to this. Now, with this, would you believe we're done with Max now?
Oh, wow.
So let's go ahead and close that out. Now what I want to do is go ahead and Alt-Tab back over into Unreal Ed, come back over here to Textures, File, Import, and again, same thing. This time I'm looking for my light map, though. Tell it Open, and my level's good, name's good, tell it OK. And so here it comes in. Now, watch this. I need to find a way to combine these two things together into a material now so that I can then use it as my final texture, if you will, or final material for my static mesh.
Right, so we're actually going to be letting Unreal Ed handle the blending of these textures.
Exactly.
So we can keep them separate, which actually gives us a nice amount of control once we go in there.
Yep. So to do it, File, come down here to New, and what I want to do, let's see, name, let's call this Final Box
Composite.
Lit. Or Composite was good. Little work. All right, now, so I've typed in a name. I'm going to come down here to Properties, and what I'm going to do is come down and I'm going to select a combiner, which is going to allow me to come in and combine two textures together. So combiner, and I'll go ahead and tell it New, and here we go. Kind of the material editor, if you will, for Unreal Ed. This is just awesome. That's all I got to say there. It's just simply awesome. And then from inside here, what I want to do is go ahead and say, first of all, that the combining operations, we've got several different ways that we can go about combining the textures together. We can go in and use color from material 1 or from material 2, or we can multiply, we can add them, subtract them, can blend the alphas. Again, this would go into a really cool texturing VTM and material development VTM that can really run deep. But what we want to do is just multiply these guys together. So I'm just going to come down here to multiply. Now, next thing I want to do, material 1, what's going to use material 1? Well, I'm going to come back over here to my texture browser, and we'll go ahead and select, get down, this guy right here that we're going to use, our diffuse map for the first material. So I'm just going to simply come down here and, go ahead and go back up here to my combiner. Material number 1, use. Okay, there he is. Now what I want to do is we'll come back over here and we will make sure that we select our light map, and then back over here we will come down here to material number 2 and we'll use that. And there we go.
So you can already start to see the effect of that in this little material preview.
Right there. You can see, you can now see top side, where before, when we're using our lighting information, there was not a top side front. You didn't have that diffuse information. You just had this color or this lighting information, if you will. So now that it's all been combined, watch this. We can go ahead and close this out. We're done. Okay, so there is our new combiner, our new material right there. So everything's now set up. So with it selected, I can now simply come back over here to static meshes, and then up under materials, I can come down here to the material and simply say use, and then use the mouse to move it and update it. And take a look at that.
Nice.
Does that look kind of familiar?
So yeah, you've actually got the blue shadow that was being cast on there.
Blue shadow.
And very accurate, if I may say.
Very accurate. And look at the if we come over here a little bit closer, take a look at the noise pattern. So we got that on there. We got the different shades of green going on. If we just kind of come on, there's the real bright green over here again with the noise pattern on it. I mean, really, really good stuff.
Right, lots of stuff you could do with that. Set up nice shadowing scenarios, or if you had a complex mesh that was actually doing some self-shadowing, then this is where you could get very accurate shadows from.
Absolutely. So now what I want to do is just come over here. Let's go ahead and make some adjustments to our builder brush real quick. Let's go ahead and go 512 and 512 and 512. And let's just create that. And let's go ahead and do a Control S. Actually, you know what? let's go ahead and leave that. That'll look good and funny. I'll go ahead and right-click over here, and what I want to do is create. Hello. That was kind of on the strange side. There we go. It just took forever for to get the thing to come up. That was strange. All right, let's go ahead and do an add our static mesh here. So there we go. I'm not going to worry about changing the textures because I'm just going to simply hit Q, and you can now see this is, let's go ahead and deselect. Well, we're going to have it selected unless we talk about one last thing real quick. All right, Logan, you want to go ahead and tell them real quick about Be Unlit?
Okay, now we've Be Unlit will decide whether or not Unreal lights affect the mesh, whether or not they'll be used to light it.
So right now, if I was to come in here and start adding lights in here, so in other words, let's go ahead and, everybody bear with me. For some reason, this is acting just a little bit strange at the moment. Let's go ahead and, there it goes. All right, let's go ahead and come up here and add a light here, and let's come over here and add a light here, and over here, add a light here. And then real quickly, just so that, you know what, let's just go ahead and close our static mesh browser for now. And let's just rebuild this real quick. All right, and if we were to come up, there we go. Now, this, Logan, I think will help significantly in what you're talking about.
So right, the mesh is being affected by the lights we have in the level, but we've already baked out shadow maps the way we wanted to. So we want to get the full effect of the shadow map. So it's like it's getting far too dark in some areas because it's being darkened by our custom shadows and then being further darkened by the fact that there's no light on the side.
Exactly. So you're going to find yourself creating light maps and then wanting to have the lighting that you place inside your map not affect your static mesh, because as you can see here, that we're starting to lose all the effects that we worked so hard a minute ago to create.
It doesn't even look like we're using that shadow map to light it because it's kind of ignored it. It's looking just like an added color.
So what we need to do is simply come in here and go ahead and open up the static mesh actor properties, and from up underneath display we can come down to Be Unlit, and we can simply change Be Unlit from false to true. And now when I deselect it, look at that.
Right. So now if we had set up the lighting to match the lighting in our scene, then we would have our detailed maps and everything. We'd be using our own custom map and only that custom light map.
Exactly. And outside of that, Logan, was there, do you want to go ahead and talk about the ambient one as well?
Well, we saw with Be Unlit is either completely lit by the Unreal lights or the Unreal lights had no effect. It's basically its default light that we had brought in. Basically, it's the resulting texture color, and of course the shadows we had brought in. Now, if you need some kind of combination between the two, meaning that the Unreal lights will still affect it to some extent, but not completely, as in you still want some to see some light on even the darkest sides, what you can do is under the ambient glow, what this will let you do is still allow it to be affected by the lights, but then actually bring up its base brightness, if you want to call it that, like what the darkest part can be. You can bring that up somewhat, and then rebuild. Might be a little hard to see, but what it'll do, you need to go in there and tweak a little. And of course, yes, I had Be Unlit turned on, which was overriding. If I turn Be Unlit to false and deselected, there you see it's darker. And as I up the ambient glow, grab a little slider, and you can see I'm brightening it up. So if you needed, this also works if you need some final brightness correction, like you had your shadows the way you want, but it was just too bright or just too dark. You can use that ambient glow just to tweak it in so it fits your scene perfectly.
Absolutely. And with that, Logan, I think we've just about wrapped everything up. Again, this is just a basic overview of the whole process of dealing with multiple textures and light maps and how to take these textures all the way back from Photoshop into 3ds Max, and then how to take multiple textures and bake them out into a single texture. And you saw how from there we can take it back over into Unreal Ed. Then we saw how we could go a step further and simply create a light map by placing lights in the scene wherever we need to generate the type of effect that we want, then baking out the light map, and then going back into Unreal Ed, and you saw that we could go in there and create a material where we combine the two textures together, the diffuse map, the light map, to get our final result, and this is what we've got there. And then we wrapped it up by talking about those two final parameters. So with this, that pretty much wraps it up, Logan.
Yep.
All right, so thanks a lot, everyone.